All right, buckle up, because this deep dive is a wild ride. It's May 2024, and this new Border Act, well, it's got everyone in Washington talking. And you know we love to dig into the nitty-gritty, so we've got our hands on the bill itself. Plus, we stuck a peek at a certain senator's website, and let's just say C-SPAN is about to get interesting. So we're talking at points at 4361, the Border Act of 2024. And yet, at first glance, it seems like it's all about clamping down on illegal border crossings. But honestly, there's more to it than just building walls higher this time. It's like they're trying to do two things at once. One, they're throwing a ton of money. You're talking billions at border security. But, and this is the interesting part, they also want to change some of the actual policies too. See, that's where things get really interesting. Like, they're putting aside $2 billion, $2 billion, for what they're calling non-intrusive inspection technology. I mean, are we talking about those futuristic scanners you see in movies? Makes you wonder what they've got planned.
Yeah, it really makes you think, what kind of technology are we talking about here? It's not every day you see that much money going towards something like that.
Right. And then there's this. They're giving the U.S. Marshals Service a bigger budget, specifically for detention costs. So, more arrests, faster deportations. What do you think?
You know, the timing of this bill is really interesting. It comes at a time when things in Washington are already pretty tense, politically speaking. It's important to remember that context. This bill is about more than just money. It's a statement.
Speaking of statements, we have to talk about Senator Chris Murphy, one of the main people behind this whole thing. We were checking out his website, and he's all about a balanced solution, you know? Wants to make things more secure, but also thinks about the human side of it all.
Well, Murphy's been a senator since 2013, representing Connecticut. He's a Democrat, but he's got a reputation for trying to find common ground, especially on tough issues like immigration.
So maybe he's the voice of reason in all of this. Then again, we watched this C-SPAN debate. Things got a little spicy, to say the least. Senator Sinema basically accused her own party, the Democrats, of playing politics with the border.
Yeah, you don't see that every day, calling out your own party like that. It's a bold move, that's for sure.
It definitely got people's attention. But does it actually work? Or is it just like political theater?
That's the big question, isn't it? Some people say it just makes things harder, less likely to get anything done. But others say it's what you have to do sometimes to get people moving, especially on something like immigration.
Like she's sending a message, right? Saying, get it together or we're in trouble. But hold on a sec. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, what about Senator Murphy and all this? We were talking about how he's one of the main guys behind this bill.
Right, and knowing his history, it's kind of interesting to see him pushing this bill so much. He hasn't always been front and center on immigration, but he's definitely not afraid of a challenge.
So when you say he's looking for bipartisan solutions, does that mean this bill might actually have a chance, even with everything going on right now?
Well, if both sides are serious about working together, finding some middle ground, then yeah, maybe. The fact that it's a Democrat sponsoring it, well, that might get some Republicans on board, the ones who aren't quite so, let's say, firm in their views. But then you've got the others who might not be so happy about it.
Sounds like a tough balancing act. And speaking of tough, we can't just gloss over that C-SPAN clip. Sinema did not hold back. She even said, this isn't a Senate interested in solving these challenges. Ouch, right? What's your take on that?
Well, it tells you something about how people are feeling, not just in Washington, but everywhere. It feels like there's so much gridlock that nothing gets done. Whether you agree with Sinema or not, she's definitely saying what a lot of people are thinking.
Okay, so we've got all this political drama, a senator trying to find some common ground, and Sinema shaking things up. But let's switch gears for a minute and look at what's actually in this bill. We talked about all that money they want to spend on non-intrusive inspection technology, which sounds kind of cool. But what about the other stuff? The stuff most people aren't even thinking about. Like there's this whole section about Afghan allies. Didn't we already deal with that back in 2021? Why bring it up now?
Good point. It shows how complicated this whole issue really is. It's not just about the border itself. It's about managing immigration, keeping promises to people who helped us out, the whole 9 yards. And remember, things in Afghanistan are still pretty messy, so this could be a way to help people who are still trying to get out.
It's like adding another layer of complexity to something that's already super complicated. Right. It's not just about keeping people out. It's about figuring out who we let in and how we take care of them when they get here. Oh, and here's another thing that caught my eye. They're talking about testing out non-detention alternatives. So instead of locking people up when they cross the border, they're looking at other options. What does that even look like?
Yeah, it's kind of vague, right? The bill doesn't really get into the specifics, but there are a few things they could be thinking about. I mean, they could be talking about things like ankle monitors to keep track of people, having them check in with immigration officers, making sure they show up for court, stuff like that. The idea is to make sure people follow the rules without putting them in jail, which, let's be honest, isn't a perfect system.
So it's about finding a better way, a more humane way to deal with all of this. But wouldn't some people see that as being too soft on immigration?
Oh, for sure. There are definitely going to be people who see it that way. Some people will say it's a step in the right direction, that it's more compassionate, but others will say it's a free pass, that it'll just lead to more problems.
It's like everyone's looking at the same thing, but they see something totally different. And let's not forget about Senator Sinema and her, shall we say, pointed remarks.
Yeah.
She didn't just say political games. She went further than that. She actually said they're choosing politics over solutions, talking about her own party, the Democrats.
Wow. Yeah, that's going to leave a mark.
It's like she's saying they're putting their own interests ahead of actually fixing things.
It's definitely a strong accusation, and it shows just how deep the divide is on this issue, even within the same party.
So is she trying to make them take a harder line? Is that what she's going for?
It could be, or maybe she's trying to position herself as the reasonable one in all of this.
Like she's the only one who sees both sides.
Yeah, exactly. It's a smart move, politically speaking. But whether it actually changes anything, well, that's another story.
It's a gamble for
Yeah.
sure. But hey, that's politics for you, right?
It's Washington for you.
Exactly. So before we wrap things up, what are the main things our listeners should remember about all this?
Well, first off, this bill, it's not just about walls and border patrol. It's way more complicated than that. We're talking funding, technology, humanitarian aid, the whole shebang.
Right, and it's all happening against this crazy political backdrop. It's like even when they try to fix things, it turns into a whole other mess.
Exactly. It's never straightforward, is it?
Nope, never. But that's why we're here, right? To try and make sense of it all.
That's what we do.
So to everyone listening, remember, this border act, it's still up in the air. Who knows what's going to happen with it? So keep your eyes peeled, pay attention to what people are saying, and don't just take their word for it. Think for yourselves.
Couldn't agree more.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder this. Is this bill, this border act, is it a real attempt to come up with some solutions? Or is it just more political games, like Senator Sinema said? We've given you the facts, now go out there and form your own opinions.